Welcome to Rebuilding LA After the Fires. I'm Jan Bresky, and in this podcast, I explore how Los Angeles recovers from the recent devastating wildfires. In each episode, I sit down with developers, community leaders, and other real estate professionals to uncover what it really takes to rebuild homes and neighborhoods. If you're looking to understand what's next for LA, you're in the right place. Let's get started. My guest today is Kimberlina Whettam. I'm really excited to talk to you, Kimberlina, and about your boutique consulting firm for developers.
Great. Thank you. I'm excited as well.
So let's start with your background and how you came into this business and what your business is all about today.
All right. So Kimberlina Whettam Associates is a development consulting, permit expediting, and land use consulting firm. We provide services to get people their approvals through the city and various agencies having jurisdiction over their projects. So it could be the county, building department, city building department, fire department, planning department, Bureau of Engineering, Public Works, street lighting, urban forestry, you name it, soup to nuts. And from beginning to end, we help with due diligence, we help with land use entitlements, we help with permit expediting, we help with inspections, certificates of occupancy, temporary certificates of occupancy, and at times, if a client ever runs into trouble, we help with some code enforcement, selectively, of course. And we work on everything from high-end single-family homes to high-rise buildings. We work on commercial projects. We work on institutional, hospitality, stadiums, municipal, LAX airport, everything but strip clubs.
Okay, that's a wide range, and your firm has been around a long time, and it's pretty sizable firm in its niche, right? Can you tell us a little bit about how long you've been doing this, and also what were you doing before? How did you get into this line of work?
Well, those are the fun questions. So I've had my business now 17 years, but I've been in the industry working with the city and adjoining LA County municipalities for the last 25 years. I would say the most immediate transition was I worked for city council. I worked for Councilman Jack Weiss in Council District 5 in City of Los Angeles and worked on everything from policy to planning to pet projects. And ultimately, the council member was going to run for city attorney. I'm not an attorney. The writing was on the wall. I would need to look for a new job. And I chose to go out into the private sector. And I've been out in the private sector ever since, and I love it. What was the big draw? I would say at the end of the day, I'm way more into policy than I am into politics. And so we're behind the scenes. We are really looking at what somebody wants to do and how we're going to get there and what's the right fit and then what's the right appropriate process and reducing as much risk as possible, helping stay on schedule, trying to stay on budget and come up with solutions when the inevitable comes up. And so we have 23 staff and we've been working nonstop in the city of LA and the adjoining cities.
Terrific. And when I went to your website, the first thing I saw was a message for people who lost their homes in the fires or who have some buildings that were affected by the fires. Can you talk about what is your message to people that are involved in rebuilding in the fire zones that you talk about on your website? Can you give us kind of a summary of that?
Well, I think in general, I think that this is conveyed by everyone, right? Our heart goes out. And the city is it's ours, right? It's all of ours. So it was an impact that has, granted, the impact was the greatest for the individuals who've suffered such extreme loss. But we want to be a partner. And we, from the very beginning, just immediately reaching out to the agencies, like here are the list of things that we think right away we've got to make changes on the policy side in order to make this flow through. So that was one of the things I think that we jumped into on action behind the scenes again is, how can we be a partner in making this process as potentially as easy as possible? And thankfully, we were able to have audience with building and safety, with the council office, with Public Works, and we were engaged with some of the private sector industry to talk about things that we could collectively, and who else could we talk to make some real changes. And a lot of the things that we proposed have been included in the executive orders. Not to say that I'm the only one that suggested these things, for sure. I'm sure other people were as well. But there were many things that we worked really hard to push for. I mean, obviously, fee waivers was a big one, but just overall reducing the length of time. A standard single family dwelling. Well, let me back that up. A complex hillside and or coastal single family dwelling project prior to the fire would take at least 4 to 6 months. And if you had a complex project, you could be looking at 9 months to a year. And if you had an entitlement, you could be looking at a year and a half.
And
So
you're
then the
talking
fire-
about, let's break that down. So this is from the time that you propose what you want to do to the time that you have the green light to start building. You're saying could be up to a year, or it could even be longer if you need an entitlement. Can you define what that means? If you need an entitlement, what does that mean?
Sure. And by the way, right now, the references I'm giving are prior to the fire, right? So this is like, if you're outside of the fire zone and or in the Palisades prior to the fire. An entitlement is when you're asking for something that typically is not allowed by right in the code. So you need to ask for permission. So if you're in the coastal zone, you may be designing a project that meets the zoning code, which ostensibly could be considered by right. However, because you're in the coastal zone, you have to go through, if you're in the single jurisdiction, you have to go through the city's coastal development permit process, which is considered an entitlement. It includes a lengthy application and environmental process to submit. It goes in queue, you have a public hearing, it's appealable. They layer conditions of approval onto your project that you then have to comply with. And you also need to go through building and safety plan check. If you're in a dual jurisdiction, you not only need to go through the city's process, you then also have to go through the state's process, through the Coastal Commission.
So
and you can't do those simultaneous.
We're gonna break this down because I think some members of our audience know exactly what you're talking about. Others don't know. And California is famously a challenging place to do development. And one of the reasons is Coastal Commission, but you're also introducing something that I wasn't as familiar with, which is the city's own coastal development environmental process. And you're saying it has to be done in sequence. You can't do them in parallel. So is the Palisades burn area within the city coastal development zone, and also is part of it or all of it also in the Coastal Commission state zone?
You have all of that. So you have areas in the Palisades that, and it is complex. It would take definitely more than 25 minutes to get through this. There are areas in the Palisades where they did a subdivision many, many years ago, and the subdivision incorporated the coastal approval. So as long as you comply with that subdivision and those coastal findings, it's more of an over-the-counter clearance. Then there are areas that are single jurisdiction in the Palisades, and there are areas that are in exemption areas, and then there are areas that are both single, they're considered dual jurisdiction. If you're dual jurisdiction, you have both.
This is complicated. So I'm glad that we're kind of trying to make it simplified and accessible. And I'm going to try to, what's that?
The great news is that the state and the city really worked hand in hand to reduce the impacts.
Okay.
So if you are in the coastal zone now and you follow Executive Order 8, which means you are following zoning criteria for your area and you're meeting a certain bluff setback, you get to have a ministerial process. So you are going to get through what used to be, if you were in a dual jurisdiction, you could be looking at 2-year process.
Okay, wait.
Now
So we gotta define every term that you use that is not a well-known term. We have to define it. So
sure.
You mentioned a ministerial approval. What does that mean?
A ministerial approval means that it is over the counter. It doesn't require a public hearing. It doesn't require months of consideration. Well, sometimes it can, but Generally speaking, it isn't going to take, it's not a heavy lift. It's an administrative over the counter, but now there's really no counter. So it's via email. There is a counter, but so much business is done virtually. So you submit into a city portal and make the request. You submit all your documents, they receive it, review it, and give you ostensibly your clearance or ask for corrections.
So let's go back. This podcast is all about how do we overcome the obstacles to rebuilding, right? How can we all weigh in and add whatever it is that we have to offer to make this happen faster, smoother, better, to get back to this city being what it was before the fires, and city and county, of course. So you mentioned that you were able to make recommendations for how to streamline the process. What's the number one thing that you recommended that has been implemented in terms of impact to make things go better? And I'm not saying it was implemented because of you, but it was a suggestion you had and it was implemented. And then I'm going to ask you part two, what is the number one thing that has yet to be implemented that you think would make the greatest impact in terms of city approvals and all the other regulatory approvals to rebuilding?
I think that one of the primary ones that I was really concerned with was preserving people's existing non-conforming rights. So if you have if your house didn't meet today's codes with location, height, massing, roof configuration, there are all these very obscure code requirements today. And if your house was built prior to those policies coming into effect, that you would be able to rebuild what you had and preserve whatever it was you had, unless, of course, it was an extremely unsafe situation, right? Outside of that. So that was one of the number one things that we pushed for, and we were able to succeed in gathering enough support from all the parties to create a policy that for 99% of the cases has become effective.
Okay, great. And then what do you think is the number one thing that you wish that the elected officials would approve that has yet to be approved? If there's anything out there that would have a big impact, what would that be?
So Executive Order 8 from the governor's office gave a lot of relief for single family dwellings in the coastal zone to make the process ministerial, to make it a quicker process without a public hearing, without appeals, significantly reducing the amount of time. They have not made this available to commercial projects. So this means parks, businesses, supermarkets, office buildings, they have not been afforded this same accommodation. So I think for me, that's the number one thing that I think I would like to see happen
right,
for our impacted families and
right,
community members.
I'm going to throw you a curveball, really tough question, but for the Palisades to be half rebuilt, the burned area, closer to 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years in your view? You don't have to answer. If you're uncomfortable going there, you don't have to answer.
My hope is we are looking at 5 years. What we are experiencing, and I am not trying to throw any of the residents under the bus. There's a lot of complex things happening outside of their control, right? So we get a lot of calls, they're ready to go, they want to rebuild, they don't have their insurance approved yet, or their insurance came back 50% what they need, and now they're going into legal battles to try and get more money. Getting cost when an economy right now is a little bit in flux. Are the tariffs going to take an effect? What will happen? How much will this really cost? So we have had a lot of start, stop, and then as well, when the administrative executive orders come down with changes that are good, it's caused redesign. So we've had projects that they were really trying hard to fit into one lane because it would be the easiest lane. And then the government expanded the options, and now they're going to redesign to meet this. It's great for them. At the end of the day, it's a good thing, but it's causing delays. So I think it could be more like 10 years.
Okay. I'm starting to form an opinion as well, and it does feel like there's so many layers of obstacles, whether it's people having the finances to rebuild or or all the other issues. And then just the simple fact that people are moving away. And
Mm.
then if they have kids and their kids are now in a new school, they may be making friends in the new place and maybe they don't feel as committed to move back. So then that would become a development project instead of an owner occupant rebuilding their house. So I believe that you had talked to some sources and either projects you've worked on in the fire zones in your company or that you're familiar with from your extensive contacts. What are you hearing? What kinds of feedback are you hearing from your sources about how things are going? What do you think our audience would be interested to know that you've heard that's happening in either Altadena or Pacific Palisades or not happening?
So we have, from beginning, it's been many months, right? It's almost 9 months now. It's been a little clunky. Let's say clunky is what I'd rather say. It's been a little clunky at first, right? Everybody was having to learn new policies, both on the inside and the outside. Architects having to learn it. Everyone's having to learn what is the new policy. We want it to work, but what does it mean? Getting interpretations. But now that it's moving more smoothly, more projects have gone through. They've approved more than 50 in the city of LA. We've seen projects go through in 4 weeks. I mean, that's unheard of. From the day you submit and pay your fees to the day you have a permit, 4 weeks it's a miracle. But there are a lot more. What I'm seeing is people with the indecision whether or not they want to move in before all the other houses have moved in. Where are their neighbors in the process? What about the air quality? I want to do this. I'm going to build this. I don't know when I'm going to move back in, but let's get going, right? So we literally have this incredible rainbow or spectrum of clients who are everything from I want to be the first one in, I want to be an anchor, I want to be there, and I want to welcome my neighbors. To other people like, I'm not moving in until 50% or more of the block is rebuilt. And I want to see a couple years of good air quality. So I think the biggest issue is indecision across the board. But again, I'm not blaming anybody. This is really
It's
complex.
hard. It's an impossible choices people are being forced to make, and it's just the luck of the draw that it was their community and not the next one over, right?
Yeah.
Um, what kinds of differences, if any, in the process in Altadena, which is county, versus Palisades in the city of LA? What are some of the differences you're seeing? One of them that comes to my mind, of course, is the governor exempted Pacific Palisades from multiple units on a lot. And even though the state law allows for up to 4 units on a lot, that does
Yeah.
not apply in the Palisades. But what else have you seen that are differences?
Well, procedurally, the county and the city work differently. I really am impressed with the county's website, to be honest with you. I've just been blown away with what they have been able to present, which I feel like is a really easy tool for anybody. Whether you're technically, you're in this industry or not. The county's website is a really useful tool. The city has very quickly worked on the fees and making sure there were no fees. And at first it was just plan check, but now it's soils and geology. So we're seeing some improvement there. We're currently trying to ask for bonds to be released. The grading bonds are required. By the way, I'm just switching gear a little bit, but it's in line. Grading bonds are required in the city of LA. They're not in the county necessarily. And we're trying to get some relief from the grading bonds in the city of LA. It's a paper process. It costs money and ties people's money up, or you pay a sturdy company. there's going to be grading. It'll be more than 50 cubic yards of dirt. It's just, for me, an unnecessary process. So I think each of the cities, the CAD jurisdictions are trying to help and are reacting to their constituency. The Palisades constituency is different from the Altadena constituency. And so I think they're both trying to be as reactive as, and responsive, I should say, responsive as they can be.
Right.
But of course, there's always room for improvement, and you don't know what you need until you get in there and you run up against a wall and go, oh, that doesn't feel well. Let's fix that.
Let's switch gears for a minute and zoom out. Since you work throughout the region in multiple cities and the county of LA as well, and I'm curious what you're seeing in terms of development activity and investment activity in general, because in the last several years, we saw interest rates go up a lot, construction costs went up dramatically, and then ULA passed the mansion tax, which also applies to sales of any real estate, whether it's commercial real estate or a single family home. But properties that are worth 5 million or more are now subject to this very sizable extra fee when if they sell the property in the city of LA. What are you seeing in terms of activity levels overall based on your multi-year, multi-decade perspective? And also, is there any shifting that's happening, away from places that maybe have these new taxes into other jurisdictions? Tell us some patterns and trends that you're seeing.
So, and I'm, this is from my perspective with my own business, but as well speaking with my peers, right, in the same industry: architects, structural engineers, project managers, developers. There's been a softening. This is a real period of it feels insecure, right, unstable, and we have seen projects completely put on the brakes and say, we're going to wait and see. We're putting this project on a shelf. It's not dead. We'll come back to it, but we're not ready right now. We'll see you in 6 months. We've had at least a handful of projects go into serious value engineering. One project in particular cut its scope in half, and we're talking about multi-billion-dollar projects. And there's a competing concern happening where there's the Olympics coming, and there are a lot of really important projects for the Olympics, and let alone the World Cup, and all the other exciting things that are happening between now and the Olympics. There's the affordable housing executive orders putting a lot of pressure on the city to respond quickly to affordable housing. And now as well, high priority to take care of the demand for the fire rebuild projects. And so the other projects that don't fall in that lane, either of those three lanes, are feeling the pinch. They're experiencing longer response times from the agencies, and it's having an impact. And the longer it takes to get a response, the longer it takes before you can get a formal bid and lock down numbers on a project. And the numbers are going up. And as they go up, our projects are either shrinking in order to try and meet their own budget. And some have literally gone on hold. So there's a softening, 100%.
Are you seeing any uptick in the other jurisdictions that are not impacted as much? For example, City of LA, it's understandable, and county, that they'll be dealing with lots of permit requests in the fire zones, but we have dozens of cities in LA County that could absorb some, Culver City, for example, or Beverly Hills, or whatever, Torrance. Are you seeing any increase in the amount of activity in other cities, to kind of where the activity is flowing out of these cities into other cities, perhaps?
A little bit. It's certainly not equal to. I definitely have clients who are looking for projects, in broader areas, not just, in the greater LA region, but as well, throughout California, the entire state. Some are looking in other states as well, just refocusing their attention. But it's not an equal relationship to the softening, and it's just moved.
Yeah,
I mean,
I am thinking about a conversation I had recently with one of my longtime friends in the industry who does kind of mid-sized projects, bigger than most of the projects that I've financed typically. And he said his investor base in the past, when he said this project's in the city of LA, they were attracted to that. And now they're sort of repelled by being here because they perceive it as being high risk in terms of regulations and sort of discouraging for allowing investors to come in and do real estate projects, and almost like making money is a bad thing. So you shouldn't, we don't want to let the developers make money. And if they can't make money, of course, they're not going to do projects here.
Right.
But it's interesting how we've gone from, one of the most attractive places to do these developments to maybe a little bit less attractive right now. But I think we're coming up on our 25 minutes. So I wanted to ask you if there's anything else you'd like to say to our audience, which is real estate investors, developers, also homeowners who are looking to rebuild their own homes in the fire zone, and professionals in the industry in general. We certainly appreciate your perspective and your incredible experience in this industry. What parting thoughts do you have, Kimberlina, for the audience?
Wow, I wasn't prepared for that. I should have thought about this, Jan.
It doesn't
I
have
think
to be
there's- I
perfect.
think that
We
there's-
just
I feel
even one or
really-
two observations would be great.
You know what? Here's what I say. I feel really confident that this is happening and it will happen. And to get in the game, to get in there and start pushing, push. All of us pushing, it's going to happen. We put a man on the moon. We can do this.
I love that. We have faced challenges before, and this is a big one, but it is doable. Rebuilding is doable.
It's doable.
And also, I'd add to that, when these communities are well underway to being rebuilt, they're going to be the best. They're going to be the best places you could go out or live, and they're going to be all new infrastructure, all new buildings. So it might be a hard road, but it's going to be great when we get there. Well, Kimberlina, thank you so much for joining the program today, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to Rebuilding LA After the Fires. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with a friend or neighbor who might benefit. Be sure to check the show notes for links and resources I mentioned today. And join me next time for more important insights into LA's rebuilding efforts.